There's no spell like the spell you can weave in the power of love. Getting someone to love you has always been considered to be a real art, a real craft. And there have been many remedies for bringing this about. You could visit an old gypsy in the wood and say, I want so-and-so to fall in love with me because I love them. What do I do? How do I make them love me? And there were ways that people could use to try to help bring this about. But the point is, we were trying to use a magic formula and tried to call upon an ancient power that helps us to bring about something that we feel will make us happy. And I think in many ways we still like to do that today, except we don't call it a spell. All we do is say, oh, I wish somebody liked me. Do you think they'll like me? Have to hope for the best. Today, liking takes on a whole different meaning when we have the internet and we have social media and we have elements of cyberspace that we have to use to find our happiness. We are in a different dimension, if you like, completely now from the one we used to be in. Spells, we could say, have been masked. They've been taken inward, as have many feelings and emotions and thoughts and ideas that we have. It's a very different world from the one we used to live in, when we used to create spells and curses and go and ask people to help us do that. It was all on the outside, and today it's all on the inside. It seems to me that everything today is, when I say it's travelled inside us, it's all become so masked, it's in disguise. It's as if the whole of the folkloric world, the whole mythical world, everything we used to know and understand and communicate with, it's all in disguise. And we sort of live behind this mask, behind this armour, this shield that we create that makes us become acceptable to each other in the modern world, which would never have stood up at all in the old world. And it's very sad to me that this has happened. When I am silent, I have thunder hidden inside. I think this Rumi quote says it all, really, about the way we end up travelling inside and suffer from repression and oppression, and we really put ourselves into a difficult situation when we are so inside ourselves, as we've become in more modern times with the loss of folklore and myth and everything we used to have in ancient days. Such, of course, results in depression. In fact, there are more cases of depression now than ever before. So we have a real downside to the way we choose to live. It of course means that we no longer can read omens, we're not able to look for signs and symbols, and we don't study our dreams as much, and if we do, then we're looking for something completely different. And of course, in our unprincipled life that we live today, it's very, very sad that we don't have the makeup anymore to be able to revive what we used to enjoy in the past and what we used to learn from and be educated by. Spells also take the form of, I think, many addictions. It's almost like a spell has been put upon you and you can't break free of it. Whether it's feeling that you want to keep playing a piece of music over and over and over and over and over again, or whether you just have to go out and do some retail shopping. It's all a case of influence, and it's influence that we are susceptible to as human beings, and we always were. And that takes us, as I often write in my books, back to the stars, which also produced influenza. Influenza. That's what we thought was the culprit for anything that was wrong with us. We thought that we'd been in the wrong position, in the wrong place, where the stars were able to drive and influence home to us. And you've only got to get somebody who can create a spell on behalf of somebody and put you in that position, and then you used to think that you were a goner because you were mesmerised, you were hypnotised, you were under the influence of something that you might need to break free from. And then, of course, you would have to go on the path of finding someone who could break the spell, or finding someone who could break the curse. And that brings us on to something else that we can take into the bigger picture of spells and curses, and that is poison. There's another side of spell making that is somewhat different, because we can see the reverse of what it means to get someone to fall in love with you. Supposing you live with somebody who's a complete nightmare. Supposing you have someone who bullies you, maybe a husband, maybe a wife, maybe the next door neighbour, and if the gypsies are staying in the wood, then it's been talked about that they can somehow help with this. Herbal concoctions that are a little bit lethal, can make people ill, all sorts of things like that. And the gypsies were known to assist people if they could prove that the person they found annoying was actually annoying them, because gypsies didn't do this half-heartedly, they didn't do it light-heartedly. You couldn't just walk up to a gypsy who's worth his salt and say, okay, I want somebody to get rid of somebody. That's not what they would do. So we do see spells for doing good things and doing bad things. And one of the most famous ideas, I think, that you may have seen regarding bad spells or curses is the voodoo doll, getting something and sticking pins in it. if we were to make a spell, how would we go about it? Well, it all depends what you're trying to make a spell for, but generally you need to put yourself in a frame of mind where you can focus on the thing you want to bring close to you, or the thing you want to repel or push away, and you can use numerous items to help you do it. There are certain things that are associated with spells. For instance, the humble apple. It can be used in spells where you wish to invite romance, but it can also be used, as we have seen in many folk tales, as a means of repelling somebody with poison. So it lends itself very well to all kinds of spells, and probably there's a reason why the apple was used in the Garden of Eden. So you have to think wisely when you're using any item to make a spell. Sometimes people even used to just write something out, and that of course brings us back to what I talked about in part 1 of Spells and Curses, which was writing, spelling. And they were written down, they were marked or carved on stone, they were marked or carved somewhere here, there and everywhere. And it got to the stage in the end where you could make a mark in a letter and send it to somebody. And as long as that had reached them, it was in their hands, and you considered that something had travelled to them and made them susceptible to the spell or the curse you were exacting upon them. Could you still do this today? It's a difficult one to answer. I think it still happens in the sense that we're still flooded with influence. You only have to look at people who get stuck on social media, stuck on video gaming. Is that not a spell? Is that not something you've been mesmerised with? If you think of addictions in many different ways, that is equivalent to a spell, or even a curse if you've got it bad enough. So I do believe it can be done today, but we have to bring psychology into the equation. And you might say, well, they didn't really have psychology, they didn't think about psychology hundreds of years ago when they used to put spells on people, or thousands of years ago, because it wasn't invented until Freud came along. But we do need to bring psychology into the equation today, because we are forced to consider what we have developed into, what we have become in our minds, in the way we behave, in our manner, in what we think and feel, and what we are expected to do, how we are expected to behave in general in society. And a lot of that has to do with technology most of the time. Many ask me how you break a curse or a spell. Well, there's no real easy answer to that. It's very complex. As I mentioned, psychology, you have to take on board the person who's had the spell or curse put upon them, and what their relationship is with the rest of the world, with the person who's laid the spell, with everyone else. There's a big complexity that goes on today, so it's not handled very lightly. But there's one thing we can say, that if we understand the nature of spells and curses and how they're made, what their purpose was and how they fitted into the fabric of life, then probably we're going to be a little bit richer in understanding how we can make our lives work, and what makes the world go round, what the essence of the natural world is all about, and what we are actually made of underneath all this that we live with in our modern times.